the courts refused to look at the science in terms of fluoride's effects on our body, to evaluate the safety or effectiveness of fluoridation that the proponents were saying. So instead, they said, we don't need to look at the science, we just need to look at the legal authority. And we conclude, and it was over and over again, not just one court case in California, several, concluded the exact same thing, that the state of California and its municipalities have what's known as police power.
Hello and welcome to Discovering True Health, your weekly deep dive into health and wellness. Thank you so much for joining us today. So as we discussed on a previous show in the Fluoridation of America series we did several months ago, the May 4th NIH's National Toxicology Programs Board of Counselors voted unanimously to move forward and publish a report that linked water fluoridation to neurodevelopment effects in children. We discussed the report in detail on the show, but just to refresh your memories, the report analyzed 52 peer-reviewed studies from around the world and found that ingesting fluoride at levels currently added to the public water supply was linked to brain impairment in babies. The study also found attention deficit disorders and lower IQs in infants born to mothers who drank fluoridated water during pregnancy and in babies fed formulas mixed with fluoridated tap water. The decrease in IQ was as much as 7 points. Some of those recent studies also were multi-year recent studies funded by the NIH. Now, at the May 4th meeting, the NTP director, Richard Wojcik, said that he would be working to get the report to publication as quickly as possible, hopefully in the next several weeks. And it has now been 4 months, and the report has not yet been published. And just a reminder, this is also the same report that FOIA obtained documents showed government officials tried to bury until it was forced to be released per court order in the current ongoing lawsuit against the EPA. So because it seems our government is not in any rush to protect the brain development and health of our babies and children by ending the water fluoridation program in the US, today we'll be learning from a leading expert how to start and run a successful political campaign to end water fluoridation in our local areas. So joining me is Clint Griess, author of Something in the Water, 12 Steps to Ending Fluoridation in Your Town. He's also a high-impact executive coach and former campaign manager and consultant. So thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation, Clint.
Oh, great to be here. It's great to be here. I'm very excited to be able to support people in getting political and doing something about this menace to our society.
Absolutely. It's time. It's overdue. It's been going on too long. So let's start with, can you share with us a little bit about your background and what was the catalyst that moved you into activism to end water fluoridation, and give us what's your why around that?
Yeah, well, that's great. I did pick it consciously from a myriad of problems that we have in our society. I could list 1,000 and everyone would say, yeah, we need to work on that. Yeah, we need to work on that. But it was in 2012, I was finishing another project, a leadership project. I've always been someone who takes a major amount of my time in life to dedicate to making my world better. That's just who I am. I believe everyone needs to be that kind of person. So up until that point, though, honestly, I had dabbled in a whole bunch of different issues, kind of a generalist and very interested in all these topics, everything from sound money to, the food supply, GMOs, it goes on and on, so many different ills in our society. And, I would dedicate a little bit of time here, a little bit of time there. And I said to myself, Clint, look, you can't just donate $25 here and $50 there and send an email to a congressman sometimes here and sometimes there. Pick one of these issues and go deep. Yeah. And I made a deal with myself. I said, you're going to pick one that you're going to dedicate your life to, even if it takes your entire lifetime to accomplish. And because of that, you can take your time figuring out what that's going to be. So I I researched a whole bunch of different topics deeper than I had in terms of not just the substance of the subject, but what it would mean for me to make a difference in that area. And fluoride and the ending of fluoridation won out. It was for a lot of reasons, some of which are very practical and some of which are very personal. I definitely I'm dedicated to fulfilling a life that that is purposeful and meaningful to me, and it has to honor my values. And so, very important to me, my whole life has been health and fitness. Not just for myself, but for everyone. I want everyone to be healthy. I'm not ashamed of that. I want everyone to be at peak health. I want everyone to be optimally functioning. I want everyone glowing with health. I want to live in that kind of world. And the other value of mine that was very important in the fluoridation issue is the personal choice issue. I really do believe in autonomy. I believe in personal responsibility, radical personal responsibility, and the idea that the government should take the authority to medicate me and all of the people I live with without our consent is a real problem for me. So those are the two principal values that I was seeking to honor in choosing to end fluoridation. As a practical matter, it's also interesting because I believed that I could make a difference in the sense that I was an amateur. I wasn't politically savvy at that time, but I knew that fluoridation was a local issue. That's the case. I mean, of course, we do talk about it on the national level. You just mentioned the federal government's research and activities recently. But in the end, it is the local utilities who actually add the fluoridation to the water. So I thought, well, that's something more tangible, more real to me. Since it's local, I could go down to City Hall and meet with my representatives and talk with them one-on-one and make a difference in that area. It also made a huge difference to me that the Fluoride Action Network existed. So the Fluoride Action Network is an enormous trove. I mean, the people there are wonderful. The database is got everything you need to know about all the news, science, the history, everything about fluoridation. And as an advocate, you need that, especially in this particular topic. You need to be fact-based. You need to be sure of everything you're saying, and the politics involved need to be precise. So the fact that the Florida Action Network existed and had already created this amazing resource meant that I, first of all, didn't have to create such a thing, and that I could rely on it in my campaigning. So that's really the decision making that brought me, and I haven't regretted it at all. Indeed, I've been able to honor a couple of other values that would kind of surprise me too. One is just the friendships that I've forged. It's a huge value of mine to have a sense of camaraderie and working arm in arm with people. And the fluoride activists I've met around the world are some of the best people.
Really are.
Intelligent, ethical. They've transcended the left-right polarity that keeps us divided. So it's so refreshing. And then, and the other thing is, it's very important to me, is rationality. And being in this fight, you're going to see that you've seen the irrationality, the twisting of logic, the somersaults and backflips that agencies do linguistically to fool people into thinking that fluoride consumed is good for you. So I'm fighting just as much today for rationality as I am for health and freedom, and for free choice, and for friendship. These are what motivate me today.
Beautiful. These are all very powerful, important reasons. And for those that don't know, because you've done extensive research on fluoride as well, what are a couple of the detrimental, things that fluoride can cause to our health and wellness that you've found from research?
Well, yeah, I mean, it affects every part of your body when you consume it. The fluorine ion it doesn't care. It will attack anything it touches. It will win out molecularly at the molecular level. It'll win out over any other because of its electronegativity. So of greatest concern to us today is the brain. The brain itself is, it has a very central role in our entire existence. IQ in particular predicts people's success in life. It's been shown in terms of their prosperity. But the bones are the place that your body has been designed. Nature knew that fluoride exists in some quantities in the ground soil. And so nature was smart enough to know that when you do get exposed to fluoride, that it should be put into your bones, because there at least your organs are protected. So we are accumulating fluoridation chemicals and fluoride in our bones. It gets incorporated because of the calcium fluoride connection into our bones and producing some really bad quality bone material that I believe causes hip fractures. And, hip fractures are deadly, to so many people. But the thyroid is a big one too. A lot of people are walking around with hypothyroidism, or excuse me, the opposite, slow thyroid.
Yes.
And that's because of exposure to fluoride.
I can't remember the word now. Anyway, slow thyroid.
Yeah, the slower thyroid, which causes people to be more lethargic and to have a slower metabolism and, be overweight. It also affects hormone balances. So these are some of the things. Of course, it causes cancers, numerous cancers. Some of them are very rare, but absolutely documented. And that should be enough to stop fluoridation in itself. And it's a cancer-causing, carcinogenic effects of fluoride is this whole story in itself.
Which I am actually about to release an article on with the Epic Times. John Remington Graham's 3 cases in the 70s and 80s. For those that don't know, there were 3 lawsuits that proved fluoride causes cancer. And then the appellate courts swept in and blocked any action. But their judgment still stood. They said, well, it does cause cancer, but you can't move forward with banning it.
So I'm glad to hear that you're doing a report on the carcinogenic effects of fluoridation.
Yeah, it's quite shocking. And I think people need to remember or be aware of those, because I think it's, kind of been buried, like a lot of things around fluoridation. Now, it's been almost 4 months since the NTP Board of Scientific Counselors voted to move that report that they did to publication. Have you heard any updates or information on why 4 months later it's still delayed?
No, I looked into it recently, just today and yesterday, and there's no word at all. It's completely silent. The NTP is doing their thing. This is when from experience, I believe what they're doing is crafting their word magic. There is an extraordinary effort put to manipulating language in order to produce a communication to the public that allows them to protect their reputation as experts, that allows them to continue the scheme, in this case, fluoridation, and to do it in a way that steers clear of any concrete or conclusive, any conclusion about fluoride's effects on the body, in this case, the neurotoxic effects. So what I think their best bet, their best hope is that they will be able to conclude that we can't make a conclusion and that more research is necessary. That has been the avenue when the science is so clear, and there's just a mountain of evidence showing that the neurotoxic effects of fluoridation. They go to work to downgrade anything in the science that they can, and to manipulate, again, the languaging such that you are left as an interested party confused and willing to say, well, I guess we just don't know at this point. It's not conclusive. We're going to have to just study it more. And everyone kind of, okay, well, that's just the way it is. We'll walk away. In the meantime, the scheme continues on. And as a campaigner, one of the most important things we can communicate to public officials who were lobbying to end fluoridation is to tell them that we don't have to have absolute proof of its harm before we stop it. In fact, where I live in San Francisco, on the books, we have something called the precautionary principle, and a Department of the Environment that was created specifically to enforce this ordinance. And in it, it says that the city and county of San Francisco must ban all chemicals that are even suggested to have harm. It's called the precautionary principle. So we've already passed that threshold a long time ago. So in terms of campaigning, we can already go forth and tell people with what the NTP has produced is significant enough to have anybody who's more interested in the health and well-being of people and taking a cautious approach would then advocate the end of it, and to say that fluoridation is a reckless thing since we don't know for a fact that it is safe. So that's where we are with the National Institute of Health and NTP and all of this bureaucracy. They just, I know very well that these weeks they are working hard, crafting every single word, like every single sentence, to make sure that it doesn't expose them to any liability, and again gives this impression that they've thought about it, and it's very much still a good idea to put it in the water, and we shouldn't worry too much because we can't conclude after all of this research, after this mountain of evidence, after how many studies did the meta review go over? Hundreds of studies now show. Of course, they're focusing, this is their big deal, they're focusing on the concentrations that are in water, typically 0.7 parts per million. And so, no scientist who even looks at this in a cursory fashion will disagree that fluoride harms the brain. And there are plenty of places in the world where, unfortunately, fluoride, calcium fluoride in particular, is in the earth around the water supply. And so people have, unfortunately, they live in these areas where there's big deposits of calcium fluoride. And so those folks have shown, unfortunately, massive brain damage in their children, IQ drops, and it's well documented. And countries around the world spend enormous amounts of money trying to remove the fluoride from their water in these areas. And the science behind that is actually very interesting for our own public officials when they do finally get around to eliminating fluoride from our water. There's plenty of technology to do that. The first thing, of course, is to stop voluntarily adding it, but in those unfortunate areas. So no one disagrees that fluoride harms the brain, but they're going to keep saying, well, at the levels that are customarily put in the water. And that, I guess, again, reveals another lie. So they won't admit that we are exposed to fluoride in many other ways besides the water we drink. And so if they were genuinely interested in our health, they wouldn't be focused so much on the concentration. Whenever a public official is focused singularly on the concentration level, that they're not the real deal. They have to know that we get exposed to fluoridation chemicals in a variety of sources. And your article pointed that out. So, pharmaceuticals, Teflon, there's just, fluorine is such a chemist's dream, and it provides, really, it's an amazing chemical. It's the 7th smallest ion in the world, in the universe, and it's highly electronegative. So I call it the chemist's dream come true. It's like super glue. It's really, really, really small, but it holds very, very, very tightly. So chemists can invent all kinds of exotic molecules. And that's why it is so popular in pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceutical companies invent new molecules every day. And they can pin together molecules that they're familiar with a little fluoride in between them. And they have a whole new molecule, and then they can go see what it does and see if they can find a use for it in the market. So when it started years ago, when fluoridation began, this is how, as you know, probably already, the fluoridation began because industry needed it to be successful in their industries, aluminum smelting in particular, and then even Freon. People, refrigeration, our refrigerators and all wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have modern refrigeration if it weren't for Freon, a fluorine gas that was invented specifically for that purpose. Of course, the Manhattan Project, they created, was a big deal. They created a very exotic fluorine gas that they used to enrich uranium for the bomb. So that, again, was important, that all of these industry and government projects continue. And despite workers, in and around these chemicals being harmed and showing visible signs, from crippling bone, skeletal fluorosis to other kinds of diseases, they needed a cover story. And that's exactly how fluoridation really began in deception and continues in deception. So today, the deception is just a lot more elaborate. It's endorsed by authoritative agencies that are supposedly filled with experts. And again, they use language very artfully. It's like witchcraft in a way. I'm reminded, if people want to have a recent example, the Health and Human Services Department about 5 or 6 years ago came out of nowhere, really with no prompting, and announced that it was changing its recommendation for the concentration of fluoridation chemicals from a range of 0.7 to 1.2 parts per million to just 0.7 parts per million. And the reason they were giving is that they had measured an increase in fluorosis, dental fluorosis, the direct result of fluoride exposure at the point in child's development when their teeth are when the enamel in particular of your teeth are being developed. And it's out of control. The percentages of fluorosis are out of control. So they recommended, with no, really, their recommendation had no binding legal authority. It's not as if water utilities had to follow the recommendation. They just came out with this recommendation. But what I'm trying to say is that the language they used in describing why they were doing it, it was the most, how should I say, mind-numbing, but like entertaining in a way, communication, because they had to admit that they were wrong in their previous recommendations that they had been recommending for decades. And they really had to admit that fluorosis is out of control. But having read their communications, you think, okay, well, everything's fine now. Everything's fine now. Okay, well, on with life. With no self-reflection, because really a lot of people who are less conspiratorial than I am, because I have come to conclude for sure at this point, fluoridation continues to harm us, to harm our health. Now, why people would want to harm our health, that again is an even deeper question. But it's clear that our agencies are not here to protect our health, and they know that it's harming us. Therefore, I have to conclude that they're doing it, they're allowing it intentionally. And so a lot of people, though, take a more conservative analysis of the situation, and they say that, yes, indeed, these agencies that are there, that are designed, like the EPA and the FDA, they were created to protect the public. That's their main charter, their mission. That maybe in the past they've been maybe influenced by industry, but today they're really just continuing to say the same thing because they have to continue to say the same thing. It's known as it's a kind of a momentum, right? An inertia, institutional inertia that they can't admit that they were wrong. They just can't admit that they were wrong. They have been wrong. They have been doubling down and tripling down and they have to continue that way. Otherwise, they lose their credibility with the public. And that is true. They would lose their credibility with the public. They should lose their credibility with the public. And they have lost a lot of credibility with a lot of the public. So, they have, if they're ever going to recover their credibility, they're going to really have to probably start over. I mean, just scrap the FDA, scrap the EPA, and start all over. I'm not even sure what the future could look like if we ever could. We'd like to be able to count on regulatory agencies. We'd like to go about our lives and not have to study every single chemical in our environment. Yeah. And to be able to trust somebody who's authoritative. But as I'm here to declare, there is no such agency in government today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we've been realizing, or the public has realized it more and more over the pandemic, and they've kind of exposed themselves, and now, people are like, wait a minute, we can't trust you. Now, speaking of this kind of the agencies, and you mentioned this is ultimate decision by the local government. Can you kind of walk us through like this structure? Because when I started researching it, I was like, whoa. So we have the CDC, we have the PHS. The CDC gives out fluoridation awards. The PHS makes recommendations. The PHS is military. I mean, how do all these kind of this hierarchy kind of feed into the fluoridation program from top down? What are the different roles of the alphabet agencies? What do they play? And then ultimately, what division of the local government is in charge of then deciding whether to fluoridate or not in our communities, so we can get an understanding of that.
Yeah, well, your experience of being confused is exactly what they would like. It's not just with fluoridation, it's with a lot of things. Kafka wrote his books and gave us a preview of the future where, it's just so convoluted. It's such a labyrinth that you get confused and you kind of throw up your hands. And then on top of that, fluoride, for some reason, it's always this weird exception, in the sense that nobody wants to touch it, but they all want to protect it. So officially, the only government agency federal government agency in the United States that has any authority over fluoridation is the Environmental Protection Agency. Because of the Clean Water Act, they were given authority and responsibility to make sure that our tap water, in particular, all of the municipalities and all of the water utilities in this nation should provide its consumers with clean drinking water. And so it is the EPA's sole responsibility. A lot of people have asserted that the Food and Drug Administration should more properly be the one to regulate it, or in addition to the EPA regulate it, because it's a medication, right?
Right.
So when people want to think of fluoridation chemicals as water treatment chemicals, then they turn to the EPA. And then if people want to look at it as a medication, which is what it really is, and it is, for a lot of people, it's a kind of a crisis of conscience when they really realize, when it comes home to roost, that the government is mass medicating us. It's something that it's beyond most people. If you just ask them, say, apart from fluoridation, if you ask the average infant, what do you think we should use the water fluoridation? Why don't we just use the water system to provide, some medicines to us that we all need? Everyone needs electrolytes, everyone needs vitamin C or zinc. Why do we have to go to the store and buy it? Why don't we just the utility to put it in? People be like, no, let's not do that. It's not use the water supply to medicate us. And then you say, well, they already are, and it kind of blows people's mind for a moment. But as a medicant, obviously the Food and Drug Administration is the agency intended to do that, and they have absolutely refused to do it. You interviewed Dr. Richard Sauerheber. You may know about his over 100 letters, the FDA's, each and every one of them with a unique appeal for them to do their job and regulate this as a medicament in combination with other exposures to fluoride in terms of proportionality of your body weight, all the things that you would do with a medication, the form of which it takes, the delivery mechanism, all the things the FDA is normally doing. He's been appealing to them and they refused.
8 years. 8 years they took to review his appeals. And he's an incredible scientist. I mean, he's a chemistry scientist for the NIH. I mean, it's mind-boggling how many scientists have come out against this and tried to get their voices across, and it's just been fallen on deaf ears.
Oh yeah, the federal agencies are like they're like castles, with very high walls and moats around them, and to try to breach them is very difficult. So the FDA is no use. The CDC really does has been found. There is a something called Fluoride Gate, where through Freedom of Information Act request, we found the CDC hiding evidence of harm, particularly to African American populations who are disproportionately harmed because of well, it's not 100% clear. It's demonstrated to be clear, but the assumption is that because of socioeconomic factors, they drink more tap water. But there's also some suggestion that an allele, which is a genetic component, also contributes to increased fluorosis in African American populations here in America. But they were found to be concealing that evidence. So we do know that they do have communications about it, but officially they don't have any stance about fluoridation in terms of they're being able to regulate it, or it's not in their purview.
They definitely promote it.
They definitely promote it. Absolutely. I think everybody promotes it, from the highest medical officers of the land. Yeah, everyone in the federal government's pretty uniform, which also tells you something. That actually is something to remark, that the absolute uniformity of the federal government, regardless of Republican or Democratic administrations. It's always a uniform voice, and that's you hear a uniform voice from the government, and then the media also is in lockstep. There's only the Epoch Times and your article are really very few exceptions, very, very few exceptions. So you get from the government, from the media, and then some other organizations, including the American Dental Association, for example, and the American Pediatrics Association, and the American Medical Association. They all promote fluoridation. They do make some caveats now for mothers who use tap water to reconstitute their baby formula. And for those, they educate you to know that you may choose to use non-fluoridated water if you want to avoid a purely cosmetic problem with teeth called fluorosis. So it's really, yeah, so in the end, fluoridation in any particular locale starts with a local initiative. So whether that is the city council or county commissioners voting as a panel to start adding fluoridation to their water, that's one way. It's very, very common. Here in San Francisco, fluoridation began through a ballot measure. So back in 1953, San Franciscans were sitting in front of a ballot and with a yes or no, and they said yes to fluoride. It was that was when propaganda was at its peak. The government and industry were highly motivated to, expand fluoridation throughout the country, and they had to do it city by city, county by county, and so they were using, propaganda. You've seen some of the reels in black and white that are a bit, kind of, they're kind of quirky nowadays. We kind of laugh at them because of the era, better living through chemistry.
This is when they were promoting cigarettes to pregnant women as well. So
yeah, DDT was a dream come true, and just so many things the chemists were producing that were just going to make life so much better for us. And so, which again is another interesting thing to notice, how quiet these same folks are today, because they've succeeded in basically saturating our nation with fluoridation. They succeeded over those decades, with the big push over those couple decades, 50s and 60s, to get the bulk of, well, now 200 million Americans consuming fluoridated water in their homes. And so now there are strategies to be silent and to not talk about it and have it to be invisible, and something that most people don't even know about and don't think about. So that's 180 degrees from how they were promoting it. You'd think if they were so proud of it, they would continue to crow about how amazing it is. But they know that if people, it's very clear, through their observations, that when they talk about it, it draws questions. And people start to wonder, should we be medicating? Should the government be medicating us through the water? So yeah, so it's the local utilities, but I will take a minute to discuss what's called a state mandate. So in, I think it's about a third of the states of the United States have on the books a state mandate, which it has various forms, but it says basically that all utilities, water utilities that have over typically 10,000 consumers, they must fluoridate their water. And we have it here in California. It was passed in 1995. We just call it the state mandate. And you can read it, and it has no enforcement behind it whatsoever. So it requires, it declares that utilities must add fluoridation chemicals, but it's not going to say, it doesn't say what's going to happen to you if you don't. So many cities in California continue fluoride free. The two largest cities, Santa Barbara and Santa Cruz, to this day are still fluoride free, and they experience no punitive damages or anything like that from the state. So for the campaigner, if you live in a state where you have a so-called state mandate, you need to be aware of that. Principally when it comes to lobbying elected officials locally to end water fluoridation, the state mandate serves as an opportunity for your local person to pass the buck. So they say,
there's a lot of that going on in the fluoride. They've set this system up where it's easy for the person you have to talk to push it off on somebody else.
Push it off on somebody else, exactly. So that's a state issue. And in fact, here in San Francisco, you can search every single ordinance that is published in our full charter and full set of ordinances that are currently in place, and you will not find the word fluoridation in it. Even though it was, like I said, it was passed by ballot measure so many decades ago. The state mandate, I guess, supplants that local. So the ordinance, you can't even find an ordinance on the book in San Francisco requiring it any longer. So in that sense, yeah, I guess we do need to work at the state level. But every jurisdiction is different, and that's the third step in 12 steps to ending fluoridation in your town, is to do a full analysis of through research about your jurisdiction, so that you can create a strategy that will be successful. Right? You got to know the terrain, the legal terrain. By what authority does your water utility fluoridate the water? When did it begin? How did it begin? What keeps it in place? Were there any court rulings in the meantime? Yes, and in fact, in the state of California, people took fluoridation to court, and which brings up another topic that I think it could be of interest. The courts refused to look at the science in terms of fluoride's effects on our body, to evaluate the safety or effectiveness of fluoridation that the proponents were saying. So instead, they said, we don't need to look at the science, we just need to look at the legal authority. And we conclude, and it was over and over again, not just one court case in California, several, concluded the exact same thing, that the state of California and its municipalities have what's known as police powers.
Yes, let's talk about police powers.
So police powers, it's a funny name, because when people hear police, I mean, they think like the guy with the badge in the cruiser, maybe stopping somebody for traffic or arresting a thief, or maybe even, white collar crime. They're police, we understand. But you see, police power is a legal doctrine that I believe deserves some new scrutiny. But in terms of the United States Constitution, there are powers reserved to the states. So the Constitution does a great job in prohibiting the federal government from doing many things, like breaching your freedom of religion or freedom to assemble, and a number of things that you'll find in the Bill of Rights. But the 10th Amendment specifically says that things not mentioned in this Bill of Rights and this Constitution are reserved to the people and the states. So I like reserved to the people more, but the states have an enormous power called the police power, which does give them. I don't particularly agree, but courts have ruled throughout the United States over and over again. It's well-established jurisprudence that the police powers doctrine does allow states to do things like medicate the populace through the water supply, because they're doing it for your own good. The best analogy that I've been able to use to communicate to people unfamiliar with this subject is that if you were on a street corner and there was someone mugging you, and a police officer should witness this, see this, and come up and try to grab the perpetrator, but in the process, they knock you over. So for your own good, they had, you maybe even stumbled, maybe even got scraped. But for your own good, the police had the power and even the moral obligation and the necessity to do such a thing. So it's hard to, but there are a lot of things. If you research, there are a lot of things that the government does with police, under police power. Every American should research police powers. Go right now, Google the term, read about it, read the court precedences, read everything you can about it. Because once the government has this police powers, guess what? They're going to increase police. So when you think of the EPA, for example, or even your state Environmental Protection Agency, California has its own EPA, for the state legislation, state protections. The EPA has police officers. Just about every agency of government today has sworn officers who are able to enforce a variety of things, everything from Child Protective Services, Health and Human Services, FDA, of course, the tax man, the Treasury Department, the feds. It's not just what we think of, police. It seems like today everyone's handing out badges like candy, because the government really wants to be able to exert this force over us. Everybody wants to be able to exert their force. It's not good enough to have a law. They need to be able to have something to back it up and to force the average American to comply.
And that's really concerning because I had never heard of it till I started my investigation into this for the Epic Times series, and hearing police power and different states saying this is fluoridation is, part of our rights as police power as a state. And I was like, police power, what? That is terrifying. And talking to John Remington Graham, who's the attorney for the 3 cases back in the 70s and 80s, the reason they completely proved that fluoridation causes cancer, the judges ruled on it. They said we need to ban it. And then the appellate court said, no, this isn't enough to overturn state police power. That's why it wasn't overturned. And Mr. Graham does say, he said to me numerous times on the phone, this is the precursor to vaccinations. This is the precursor to what is happening with COVID and how they're kind of wanting to take over our health. They've kind of established this through many court cases saying, no, we are going to medicate you through your water supply, whether you like it or not. Even though you've proven it causes cancer, you've proven it causes lower IQ, we have the police power to medicate you per law.
Exactly. So whenever the government determines that there's a community interest, they will use this police powers. But another example, whatever you might think of rent control. The rent control ordinances in this country are established based on the city's police powers. Yeah, so it's widespread, and it's interesting that more people don't talk about it. And all of the talking heads on TV and all the news cycle of all the legal things going on in the court systems nowadays, and people are interested in watching court TV and all this stuff. It's not often that the police powers comes up, but it is so central to so many things.
Yeah, and we need to be aware of that because it could be utilized for a lot of harm too. It's kind of a loophole, as far as the Constitution and our rights. It seems to me like they could really just say, well, we've established this over many court cases, we can do this because it could go in a really bad direction, even worse than fluoridation. So something to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It needs to be reevaluated again. And for the campaigner trying to end fluoridation, it's something to be aware of, because so many campaigners come into the situation thinking innocently, well, I'll just point out the fact that this is a medication and that we don't consent, and that's just not okay in a free America, right? That should be the end of the story. And then you learn about police powers. So we need to convince our elected officials. This is where campaigning comes in. It's so important. We need to convince our elected officials that it's not in the community benefit to fluoridate, that's not a good use of the police powers. A good fact, and the good use of police power would be to make sure there is no fluoridation in our water, natural or otherwise.
Absolutely. So now we've kind of talked about the third step, which is kind of evaluating your own community and, who's in charge and what the laws are in court cases, etc. What are some of the other steps, if somebody wants to organize in their community to end water fluoridation program, kind of what does that entail? What are some things they need to know about moving forward with that?
So as soon as you establish, the truth of what your jurisdiction is, the authority that your city or county uses, or sometimes, it's a water authority that spans over several cities. Once you understand where the water flow, where the fluoridation is flowing, where it comes from, and how it came to be, then you design a campaign based on one of a handful of avenues, broad avenues to success. So it's step 4, where you choose your avenue of success, and they are, for example, going to the ballot, right? So a lot of people, in fact, think of that initially, we'll put it on the ballot, and that is one of the avenues. But even more direct and more cost-effective, and potentially, depending on your jurisdiction, a quicker way of of getting fluoridation chemicals out of your water is to directly lobby your current elected officials, because it doesn't cost anything. And it's important to develop relationships with these folks anyway. And so you put forth your case, and then you find allies in your government, and then you build a coalition, and then you ask them to do things like minimally have a hearing on the issue. Ask your local health department or your local utility to prove their case. Show us the evidence. You say it's safe and effective. Show us. All the way up to producing legislation to ultimately end it. Another avenue is, of course, the courts. We still have the EPA trial shows that, and then I still hold out that there's some creative things we can do locally in terms of the courts to end fluoridation. I was looking, for example, at the provision in the Department of Environment here, the precautionary principle, and looking to see what teeth it has. And is there any way that I could sue based on that? Unfortunately, it proclaims all of these things, but it doesn't add any penalties for the government. It's the government regulating itself it's about citizens being able to force them to regulate. So unfortunately, that's not an avenue, but it's worth researching to see. Again, once you know the laws in place in your area, you can at least look and see if there is an avenue of victory that you could foresee. The other one is similar to go in the ballot box, because it does require voting, and that is to run for office.
Oh.
Right. So you can run for office, and of course you would have a platform to discuss the fluoridation, which in itself, as you know, is a victory, because so often it is a silent topic and most people don't talk about it. As a fluoride-free activist, it's actually interesting to go through life and watching people get really excited about the issue of the week. You can see very well over time that there are trends, and that people get really excited about this or that, and they move through various issues and topics one after the other, like a herd. It's trendy. It's just like fashion. And when you walk in and you say, "What about fluoridation?" people are like, "What? What's that?" It's never the top five issues that people are looking at any particular time. So if you run for office, you can definitely, you'll have a broader platform. Maybe you can integrate it into an environmental platform, or in more conservative areas into a free choice platform. It definitely dovetails very well with an overall campaign that people can have. So so we have direct lobbying, we have the courts, we have the ballot in terms of a ballot measure. And in the book, there's some discussion about all of these, the pros and cons. And then there's something called direct action too. This is what a lot of people think of when they think of political activism, which is just to get a bunch of people together outside of City Hall with picket signs and make a lot of noise. It's wonderful, particularly for newer campaigns who want to draw attention and grow their base within the city, is to do direct action. And really, your creativity is the only limit. So, you could have street theater, you can, get a blimp. I mean, you can have events like music concerts. You can have, any number of things that you can do. Of course, the caution is to do it responsibly, so that you actually do draw people to you. You want to create some controversy without being victim to, if you get in the news, that they're going to be able to use whatever you're creating against you. So be wise about your direct action, but it's great. And then there's public comment. You can go, it's very popular now. People are getting the idea, oh, I can go and I can have my 3 minutes in front of the council, what have you, and say a thing or two, and it gets recorded, which you can then later use as an asset in your campaign. So I encourage people to choose one of these broad avenues, because it's too expensive and too cumbersome to try to do more than one at a time. And for a successful campaign to be for itself and for everyone you talk to about, this is our campaign. We are focused on a ballot measure, or we are focused on getting our city council to produce a new ordinance that, either outright forbids fluoridation chemicals or does something more interesting. For example, say that the fluoridation chemical manufacturer has to certify that its product is safe for human consumption, which no producer would dare do. Therefore, the city wouldn't be able to find a place to buy it. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but pick one and then build your campaign around that. Everybody understands that's where you're headed.
Absolutely. That was so helpful. Thank you for sharing all that. Now, as I have personally learned in my own fluoride series that was published, the pro-fluoridationists can be quite aggressive, particularly the ADA people. And I would assume because there's a lot of money to be lost, this is a very passionate, debate on both sides. So who are the big pro-fluoridation players to be aware of? What are some of the tactics to expect that you've seen? What are some of the arguments on their side? Just so those kind of wanting to get started can be aware of that aspect.
Well, I'd say our biggest enemy is the media. We do not get fair reporting. If we simply had fair reporting, fluoridation would be over. If journalists regularly treated fluoridation objectively and provided, as they're so often claim that they do, they provide both sides of the story, so to speak. If they did do that successfully, fluoridation would be over. So it's consistent. I've been watching it since my commitment to end fluoridation in 2012. To do the math, so that's 11 years. I've been watching the media, and not just the United States, all over the world, wherever fluoridation exists. The media is uniform. They do use the exact same playbook every single time. That's why I want to thank you again and again and again for being an enormous exception to the rule. If everyone did what you did, again, fluoridation would not exist. It just wouldn't, because rational people would understand.
Well, and that's the issue. I would get feedback from the editors. Hey, can you add more from the other side? It's kind of seeming one-sided. I'm like, there's nothing else on the other side. Like, it's all showing it's harmful. Like, I tried to go to the EPA and they're giving me a blanket statement and saying some nonsense about fluoride being a natural element, which the fluoride added to our water is not. I'm not getting anything from the other side to add here. So it's shocking that regular media cannot, seem to get it right.
But they definitely have they have a clear stance, that fluoridation is good for you, that people who say who question it are conspiracy theorists. I cover this in the book because every activist has to confront the deception for themselves personally. It's kind of emotional at some level to confront the deception, that this isn't just an innocent mistake, for example, and then how widespread it is, and then to be able to talk about it responsibly. That's a huge thing. It's the very first step, confronting the deception. But the media it's amazing how uniform they're playing. They all follow the same playbook. It's so obvious to the word. So that's not good news for a political campaign, because you need the media to be successful. So thankfully there are alternative media that are popping up in a big way. There are ways that you can force fluoridation onto the front pages of the mainstream media as well when you do have a campaign. But be prepared that they are going to paint you with a certain color brush, and that's just the way it's going to be. So although I don't want to be completely resigned, you know, because there are things are changing. Things are changing, and there are journalists of conscience. You being one of them, you give us enormous hope. I've thanked you 1,000 times, and not only because of your reporting and the impact it's going to have, but just personally, how it does remind me that yes, good people do exist, and authentic journalism could actually be a thing.
Make a comeback.
Make a comeback, exactly. So that's a big one. But yes, when you are on the campaign trail and you develop some success, you can predict that the dentists, these dentists, come out of the woodwork. They are the most. I assume there's a phone tree, a hotline or whatever. They are on call.
Yes.
They are like sleeper cells.
Yes.
And yeah, most of their lives are spent, just advocating fluoride treatments in the dental, in the chair in the dental office, and recommending fluoridated toothpaste. But yeah, when they're asked about the water, which is an entirely different subject, a lot of dentists went through dental school, and we have 2 dental schools here in San Francisco, and I've spent time trying to get in their doors and try to have some kind of debate with their students and try to get to the students before. But the students are run through quite an immense training, and a lot of it, of course, is practical, literally in people's mouths, dealing with the material reality of people's mouths and teeth. But they do get propagandized. They are told that the fluoridation in the water is a huge advantage, huge step forward for mankind, and they are entreated with some research papers, but they aren't required to read them, understand them, use their critical thinking about them. They just shown the abstract and saying, see, the evidence is there. You can go wave the flag of fluoridation, water fluoridation. And they do for the rest of their careers typically. And that's just because of a certain mindset. I think maybe you've come to conclude that there's just a certain percentage of people who don't care to think for themselves and really, really, really hold tightly to an existence where other people tell them about the things that matter in their lives, whether it's the laziness or just a lack of confidence in their own ability. I don't know, but there's a certain percentage of people, and I don't personally spend a lot of time with that group of people because I think there's something about it that's really cemented, and it's better to work with people with whom you have some chance of breaking through.
Absolutely.
But anyway, those people love to be told what to do, and I think dental students, they're very much protocol driven, like a lot of the medical industry, and there's a lot to teeth biology. You'd be surprised. I talked to my dentist extensively, and I learned from him, and I also teach him. And there's unfortunately, we have a lot of back and forth. I've already convinced them that we don't need fluoride in our toothpaste. I don't need fluoride in my toothpaste. Let's just put it that way.
Up with your dentist. Wow.
Yeah, there's what we have in our saliva is sufficient as long as we remove the sugars and plaque from our teeth through gentle brushing on a regular basis. We're good. Diet, because actually there's another big thing is that the tooth is nourished from the inside too, so you can't have a terrible diet.
Right. I had Jack Call on with IEMT a couple of shows back.
That.
And he was explaining that your tooth actually has fluid moving in and out of it. And I was like, wow, not many people are aware of that. It's quite interesting. But yeah, the whole holistic dentist approach is absolutely fascinating.
So yeah, as a campaigner, be prepared. The dentists are going to come out of the woodwork. If you're successful in having a hearing, they will come. And you don't know who they are or how they came to be, but they will have talking points, and they will be full of lies. They will lie, and they will just, I'm saying it again, outright lie. I can give you a severe example. We've seen there's something called baby bottle rot teeth. So some mothers, I guess, unfortunately, have a bad habit of leaving a baby bottle in a baby's mouth, like even overnight. And whether it's what sometimes it's fruit juice, but other sugary, even milk has milk sugar, lactose in it. Anyway, they leave it sit on the teeth of the bottle in the mouth. So then you get the teeth. Google it for images. It's horrible to look at. Babies' brand new teeth, which are I presume softer and more susceptible to sugars and whatnot, are just rotted, like almost a circle that reflects the shape of the bottle. And dentists will project this image in front of city councils and say, if you stop fluoridation, this is what you can expect.
Wow.
So yeah, they are prepared to lie and exaggerate and use fear tactics to scare people into believing that, this cavity crisis, this dental crisis is so horrible that a day without fluoride is just a huge risk you don't want to take. So they're very hard to argue with because they're very articulate. They come with these talking points that I presume have been proven to work. They didn't just come up with them themselves. It's a syndicate. It's organized. You can tell. Again, I've watched this because I've been organizing worldwide campaigners, and I've seen these many of these public forums and these hearings, and it's the same thing over and over. The degree of lies can change, but they have no problem lying. And they have the authority that comes with it. That's another step in the book. It's all about credibility. This particular fight demands that you address credibility head on, that the agencies that we're up against have a built-in credibility to the extent that they do. We mentioned that it's eroding somewhat, fortunately, in some areas. But our own credibility has to stand. We can't fight in this realm unless our credibility is really well established, and they will try to attack our credibility. So there's a whole chapter just on how to be credible, the importance of being credible, being responsible for your credibility, and once again, admitting to and expecting that the credibility of our opponent is going to have huge sway over the people you're trying to influence.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, even in my research and work, as a journalist, you need to get both sides. And so I was like, oh, let me talk to maybe a dentist who's very much feels fluoride is good. And I actually went through a family member who had a dentist that they were saying, oh yeah, he's very pro fluoride. So, the conversation was kind of like, okay, well, what kind of research have you read? Oh, well, this is what they taught us in dental school. I was like, okay, but what did they teach you? And have you read any research since then? Well, no. And I was like, so you haven't read like the NTP report? You haven't read the, there's quite a few government reports out there that, show that it's very detrimental to many aspects of our health. And I can send you a couple, but you've never read any of these? Nope. I'm like, okay. So that's the problem. And then there was another instance where I think it was the article that I did on the NTP report, and I was trying to find, or no, it was the article I did about how it affects IQ, and it was the new NIH studies that were done in Mexico and Canada that showed that it reduces IQ up to 7 points, and that's just the amount that's actually in the water supply, the 0.7 that we were talking about that's added, and it also gets in how it can cause ADHD, etc. Well, I was like looking again at the pro-fluoridation sites to see if I can find the other side and something to put about the other side. And one of them said, oh, there's a cohort study out of Spain. And this cohort study out of Spain says that fluoride actually increases IQ. I was like, what? Oh my goodness. Well, I need to read this study and include it. And I have another side. I have a balance now. I read the study, and the study doesn't say anything of that at all. Like, at all. It says the opposite of that. It says that when they compared fluoridated from non-fluoridated areas, the non-fluoridated areas IQ was higher. And it is prudent to question the effects of fluoridation on the IQ, but we also need to, look into if there's possibly positive effects as well. I think it added something like that. But they straight out said, I mean, it was a blatant untruth. I mean, that there was nowhere in the study that stated that. So I was shocked. And I tried.
Yeah. Yeah, again, they're willing to lie. They're willing to misrepresent. They're willing to, it's just, you see it, it's not just with fluoridation. You see it all over the place. They take a scrap and then build up a whole case around it because most people aren't paying attention enough, and it works. And if you have the media spinning with you, you're done. You're good.
Absolutely. You also
Yeah.
mentioned these local and federal government public meetings that you can do written and oral presentation. And many of the fluoride activists and experts are consistently out there in full force. And I've learned that between speaking to a lot of you, and I'm so grateful for all your work that you're just constantly giving your time to fight for the health of all Americans and attending these meetings consistently to speak on behalf of our health and wellness. So for someone just getting into this, what are some of the important public meetings to become involved in? And then how do we go about finding out about them?
Right. So again, I would focus on local.
Okay.
Primarily local. If you're on the Fluoride Action Network's distribution list, you might get an alert from time to time of something going on at the federal level. But as a local activist, it's up to you to again understand your local government sufficiently to know who are the agencies, who are the entities who have the authority, who claim the authority to fluoridate your water. Perfect example, representative, I think, of a lot of places is San Francisco. The utility, the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, who runs the water, not just fluoride, but chloramine and all the other things that they put in the water for sanitation and other kinds of reasons. They are the ones who directly add fluoridated chemical. There's a plant with an address, and you can go there, and you can even take a tour probably and inspect it. Although they say so often, if you tour the water plant, they say we can't take you to the fluoridation treatment portion because it's too dangerous. And it is. But at any rate, there is a place where it's fluoridated, and there's somebody who runs that plant, and that person has a boss, and that person has a boss, and that person has a boss. But at the same time, the health department, which is an enormous bureaucracy in San Francisco, because of, for a lot of reasons, but, AIDS, for example, is huge in San Francisco. And the health department just kind of like took over. And then with COVID, they had this enormous, just over the top kind of, authority in our lives. So they promote fluoridation as well. And they're the ones who establish the health justification. Okay. Right. So they're the ones doing the logical rationale behind fluoridation, and then the utility is the one who actually just does it. So when you talk to the utility, they will tell you we're just following the rules. And we have and it's true that I would say for the most part, even considering how harmful an accidental overfeed could be, and it has happened that people have died, as you know, from an accidental overfeed. For all the fluoridation that happens in the world, these treatment plants do a really good job of keeping those concentrations where they're supposed to be. And you asked for, there's another organization called NSF, originally called the National Sanitation Foundation, and now like they just go as NSF. They've been around for so long now. They certify a lot of things from plumbing pipes to like electrical outlets, and you see the NSF seal on so many things. You don't really think about it on, when you buy a lamp, you look at the bottom of say NSF. Anyway, the NSF also has certification for fluoridation treatment plants, and NSF is not a government agency. It's this independent certifying agency that's just become the go-to for that. And if you ask about a utility, they say, we have an obligation to fluoridate the water given to us by the city, county, or state, and we're doing it according to NSF standards. And that's all I can tell you. If you go to the health department, they're the ones, again, who then are the ones who presumably are the ones to say that we're doing it for your health, for your own good, right? They're the ones that have the police powers. They're the ones that really are the authority about your health. So they're the ones who they manage the program. They don't do the fluoridating. They do the propaganda and they do the policing of it, right?
It's very disjointed.
Very disjointed. But both those departments do supposedly they're accountable to the mayor and the board of supervisors, our legislative branch. So anyway, so you just need to know who's who. And there is a water commission. There's a public utilities commission. It's a commission. There's a board of people who are commissioners. They have their bi-weekly or monthly meetings. You go. You can speak to them. Those are much smaller forums. They will have public comment period, but you can also, just being in the room before and after, you can meet them and start talking to them. Some of these groups have citizen groups, volunteer groups that they're kind of like feeder groups, or like I participated in. They're basically people who want to get government jobs, and so they're like get involved that way and make themselves known as somebody who's a toady. They'll toe the line. But anyway, if you can manage that, you can get in there and potentially influence the people. In the end, initially, in the beginning, you want to find out who's who. So even before going up to somebody and say, hey, let's stop fluoridation, help me stop fluoridation, you want to talk to them a little bit, get to know them a little bit about their politics, and find out what kind of animal they are politically. If they are, a complete, follow the rules, do it, go along to get along kind of person, who cares about freedom or health, I want to keep my job, and that you're not going to get very far with that person. But if they have a record, maybe you've seen in the news, you can do some research and find out that they have actually opened their mouth and said something, gone outside the lines a little bit.
Yeah.
Then you'll know that about them. But anyway, so you don't just hit them straight on with the fluoridation issue right away. It'll turn them off. And instead get to know them, establish your credibility, and then talk with them and find out, maybe ask them what their experience with it is, what they think about it, just to see if they're open to conversation about it at all, and then work from there. But anyway, in terms of public comment, I have a wonderful video presentation on our YouTube channel, Fluoride Free Campaigns. I don't know if you know, but the 12th, we're going through this year. Each month, the second Saturday of the month, we have a worldwide video conference of activists going through the book together. So you read the step, and then we discuss it. And I recommend you go to fluoridefreecampaigns.com and sign up for that event and join us.
Yes.
And read it. But I also did an interview with Brenda Saudermeyer. I think you met her.
Yes, she's incredible.
Yeah, we did a whole thing on public comment. And so basically it's the best of the best, like how to do it, all the things that you'd want to do an amazing public comment, not only by yourself, you go with others, and each person takes a point and you build together, because you usually have a limited period of time, and it's not enough time really.
Yes, it's easily 3 to 5 minutes from what I've learned. I'm like, what can you say 3 to 5 minutes.
5 minutes is a lot. Yeah, it's usually 2 or 3. But anyway, they don't really want to go through it. The typically the commissioners, that's when they check out. Kind of this is, but a good communicator can break through.
Yeah,
And again, if you work with other people, then you can add your 2 minutes plus their 2 minutes, and you can build a whole case together.
that's
So
a great.
there's a lot of different ways to strategize and prepare, and even how to follow up afterwards. And anyway, how to make the most out of public comment. And we have a whole video dedicated to that on our YouTube channel, Fluoride Free Campaigns. You can go check that out.
Beautiful. I'm going to post that below. And is that the interview with Brenda as well, or do we
Yeah,
go?
Brenda and I go back and forth. She's a
Wonderful.
star because
She's
she's
amazing.
done it a number of times, and she's you learn by trial and error, and that's just get in there. Even if you you'll have this video to give you an advantage, but you don't. In all of this campaigning, yes, there is a mistake of being overconfident, as I was. I'll be honest. I said, how hard can this be?
Right.
So obviously wrong. I'll just make a few calls, send an email, send a few links. And if, and even then that didn't work, okay, so what? We organize people, they come to my living room, we get together, we get a nonprofit going, we can start fundraising, we have a few events. It's not rocket science, and on one level, it's not rocket science on one, in the sense that, there's no skill that you'll need that is so rarefied, like brain science, brain surgery or whatever. There's, anyone can throw an event. Anyone can go in and make an appointment with an elected official. Anyone can do any of these things. So you probably already have a good set of skill set. You and the people you can gather around you probably have the skills that are necessary to run a successful campaign. But be careful not to be overconfident, because this fluoridation issue, for whatever reason, tends to be extremely resistant to change. So that's why the last step is don't give up. Like, no matter what, literally don't stop. Get in there with whatever skill level you have, start doing it. The best way to learn how to be a campaigner is on the court, in the field, doing the thing. It's the best. I mean, I would say, I'm a campaign consultant. I've run local electoral campaigns in San Francisco and one for Congress. And I can tell you, there's no course really. I mean, there are some offerings I've seen, thankfully, teach people how to run campaigns. And my book obviously teaches you how to run a campaign, particularly to end fluoridation. But it's just one of those things you learn by doing.
Yeah.
Just roll up your sleeves, just get in there. Again, the book I offer you will help you enormously, just to help frame a lot of things and give you some structure and some principles to go by. But every situation is different. Every campaign is different, because the people who come around it are unique and different. But just roll up your sleeves and get going, and don't stop. Keep going and keep going, keep learning. So something doesn't work, fine.
Yeah.
Fluoride-free activists have to get very familiar with failure. You have some success and just think, oh, that's going to be the thing that's going to do it. Right. But then the dentist comes out, or you get a hit piece from the media, or somebody will talk to that politician you thought you were making headway with, and they'll suddenly change their tune, and you won't know why. So you have to always be prepared to learn from what has happened. If it didn't go your way, that's an opportunity to learn more about this mysterious, thing that we're dealing with called fluoridation, and to update from your experience what's true, and then make the next step, make the next plan, and keep going and keep going.
Wow, that's such great advice. And I have such respect for all of you that, I've met so far, and the ones that I haven't met have been in this game for so many years. Yourself, Jack Call, John Muller, Karen Spencer, Brent Stoudemire, Richard Heilber, Mr. Graham, the Fluoride Action Network, the IAM.
Stuart Cooper, Michael Connett. Yes, Ellen Connett.
Yes. I mean,
And
there's so many who have been in this for their entire lives. Like, is Connett Senior? He's been in it for his entire life. Mr. Graham has been in it his entire life. Many of you, I mean, this has been your life's work. I mean, I'm just so grateful, and it's amazing to meet people like you, because, like you said, the community is just so passionate about health and wellness. And the other thing I found fascinating, you mentioned this earlier, is the political, there you get people from the right and the left, and you all come together on this, and there's no, you've been able to like overcome that, whereas most other Americans just can't seem to do it right now. It's very fascinating. Are there any other places to find and become part of these really great groups? Because allies are so important. I know we're going to post the link below to your group. If you want to share a little more about that. Are there any other networking groups that you would recommend?
well, yeah. So again, it's a local issue. So you can go to the Florida Action Network, and they do have some lists of active campaigns. It's hard to keep, an ongoing, accurate list at all times. Campaigns come and go, but you can definitely contact them and let them know where you are, and they can plug you in with an existing campaign if there is one. If there isn't an existing campaign, guess what? You get to start it from scratch. And so people use Facebook, and there's a lot of Facebook. If you go on Facebook and just put fluoride free, clean water, and you're in the name of your town or area, you can find if there's a group that exists. A lot of times, you'll find that there was once a group, maybe years ago, and they're defunct now. You can maybe revitalize it, or again, if there hasn't been anything going on, you start your own campaign. And yes, so starting from scratch is actually probably going to be the most in your local area. Starting from scratch is going to be the most common experience. I mean, if you're in a big city, if you're in New York, I can tell you there's a group there that's very active. If you're in actually New Zealand, has the whole country has throughout the country, they're very active right now, because New Zealand, unfortunately, the national legislature passed a mandatory fluoridation law just last year, and so they're fighting still at the local level, because they can push back and they can try to resist this national law, mandatory law. The United Kingdom did the same thing.
And this is all recent.
This is all recent. Yeah. So again, it's bad news, but we need to fight in those areas. So again, if you're looking for a group in your area, just look online and do a search for your name plus fluoride free or clean water, clean water Savannah, clean water Austin. The people in Dallas are very big. There's a group in Dallas already. So see if there's an already group involved, get involved, but you very much likely will start your own, especially if you're in a smaller town. But do it. And then the fluoride free campaigns, the monthly group we have is the one international organization, and the one international confab, gathering of people that I know, if it's the only one. And I don't know if you know that I was doing this for 4 years straight. That was the source of the book. So yeah, from 2014 to 2018, for every single month for 2 hours, we worldwide activists, and with the design to share our experience and learn from one another, to support each other in our own local campaigns. So we didn't have to, reinvent the wheel every single time, all of us. And all of that is recorded and available on a library called the International Fluoride Free Teleconference.org. And you can listen to hours and hours and hours of testimony from doctors and lawyers and dentists and advocates from all over. And I hosted that for 4 years straight. And so that's actually what was the source material for the book, Something in the Water 12 Steps to Ending Fluoridation in Your Town, because I distilled all the best advice from so many different experts, people who lived it and lived it and lived it. and to take that advice and take that wisdom and distill it down into the 12 steps. And that's how it came to be.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so this year, the monthly conferences are called fluoride-free campaigns. And again, people are loving it. It's so wonderful to come together with people who outside of your locality, because they're, the circumstances of their fluoridation might be different, but the similarities are what are so fascinating. Like I said, how the media uniformly treats it, or how politicians do or don't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of, just for example, you will have some success with some politicians talking about the cost, the literal financial cost of fluoridation. And if it's a town that's like looking for a place to cut budget, they might be an ally, not because they care about the health of the people, not because they care about free choice. They may personally care about these things, but as a politician, when they go out just to say, let's end fluoridation, they can say it's going to save us money, and we need to cut back anywhere we can right now. So let's look at, saving money by not spending all this money on fluoridation chemicals and upkeep on the system, which, is very expensive because fluoridation continues.
Another great point is how much this costs communities, taxpayers.
Yeah. So my point is that, yeah, there's different differences, but the similarities are astonishing and really helpful. So I recommend people join us for that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad you guys are still meeting and doing that, because it's so important to network between everybody. Now, for those that want to check out your book, where can we find it, or they want to contact you or check out more of your work or your consulting that you do?
Yes. So the book is available on a couple of places. Amazon, of course, in both the United States, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. And if you don't care to use Amazon, and I understand, it's also available on The Book Patch. That's thebookpatch.com. You can go to their bookstore, look for 12 something in the water, 12 steps, and you can find it there as well.
Beautiful. I will definitely post links to all that below, so you can get in touch with the groups and the books and etc. So thank you so much for joining me today. This was such a great conversation. Thank you for all the work you're doing over the many years, for just tirelessly and relentlessly, chipping away at ending this fluoridation program in the United States, and for advocating for the health of Americans when most of us don't even know it's happening. So this is incredible. Before we wrap it up, do you have any final words to share with anybody who's looking to get into ending the water fluoridation in their local community?
Well, this is my calling, is to get people to get active. Many people are coming to the knowledge that fluoridation isn't good for us, and that fluoridation of the water is a part of a pattern, a bigger pattern. And a lot of people are waking up, so to speak, to what's really going on, as they say. But so often people stop there. Fluoridation began with politics, and it has to end in politics. So whether you thought you were a political person, or whether you thought you want to avoid politics because it's not fun, it's unseemly in a lot of ways, this should be and could be your calling. This could be the reason to become political. And the fight against fluoride in particular is so representative of so many of the other issues that face us. Within the fluoride fight exists all the elements that you will see in all the things that ail our society, all the problems in our society. Again, from the media to the collusion with government and universities to the police powers we talked about. Everything, it's baked in the fluoride debate. And I like to put it this way: if we, the people, can't even stop the voluntary addition of a neurotoxin to our drinking water, then what are we worth as a people at all? So get off your butt, become political, learn politics, identify yourself as a political person, and do what it takes to stop fluoridation in your town.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much again. This was such an honor to have you on.
You're welcome. Likewise. I'm a huge fan.
If you like this video, please like and share with others. This information could really help someone you may know. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all next Wednesday on the next episode of Discovering True Health.